We are now live together. Okay, so when you go to challenges, you'll go to the page where you'll be seeing the challenges that were present in the previous MTN challenge. But down here, there is documentation, there is the API Sandbox. So right now we are on Momo API resources. So I'm going to go to documentation. Okay, so in the documentation, of course, I'll click on the introduction. So in the introduction, they are introducing the purposes of the blah, blah, blah of the API, and then how to get started. We're going to go how to get started. Okay, so in the getting started, please read and get this. The first thing you must do is sign up for an account. That is the first thing you must do. The second thing you must do, you subscribe for a product. Now, during the competition, they said, I think remittance and disbursements. No, collection we get and remittances were not provided at the time, but collections and disbursements were provided. So you can read through what do these products do, and then you can subscribe to both if your application is doing both. And then we're going to see this. So you can read through this. It's okay. But then people were saying the documentation was so confusing. So after reading through this, I'm going to go now to the documentation and also the sandbox. So the moment you subscribe for a product, you get a product key, and that product key is in your profile. So if I've signed in, all right, in my profile, I'm going to be getting I'm going to be getting what I've subscribed for in my profile. So if I'm in my profile, then I go to my if I go to where I've signed in, and then I go to my profile. Okay, you can see, for example, I subscribed for collections, and then I also subscribe for disbursements. So here you have your primary key and secondary key. For now, I'm not sure for the use of the secondary key, but for the primary key, you can regenerate in case this one doesn't work, but you can click on show. So when you click on show, you'll get you'll be seeing your primary key. So I'm also going to launch Postman later. Maybe I'll do another video for people who are using Postman. So when you click on show, you can get your primary key, and then you copy it. Those who are going to be using Postman, but those who are going to be using the API Sandbox, your primary key will always be there. Okay, so if that is okay with you, let us go now to how do you create a user. The user you're going to create is you registering yourself in the Sandbox, because the Sandbox is our first testing environment before we go live, and the responses we get from the Sandbox is what we use to determine if everything is okay or not. The other thing you need is a UUID generator. You can get that by typing online UUID generator in YouTube, or you can even get the link here, and I've pasted the link in the chats. I'll also paste it in the comments, but let me do that. Let me paste the link in the description, copy, and then paste the link in the description here. I have it. Oh, sorry. Okay, let me paste it in the comments since let me paste it in the comments since so that's to get the UUID generator. All right, so when you go to the documentation, they ask you to create a user. I've talked about that, and we're going to go to the Sandbox now. When you go to the Sandbox, many people do not scroll. That is one of the problems. Do not scroll. But when you scroll down, you have collections, you have disbursements. These are your products. But down you have the API user provisioning. And the first thing you're going to create is an API user. And then you're directed here on what to do. So the API user, you are posting to the Sandbox. So when you post to the Sandbox, this is the link. So you're posting a request to the Sandbox to create an API user. And what do they want? Like I said, I'll come back to Postman. But they want an X reference ID, which is going to be a string, which is going to be the UUID. Okay? And then they want the content type, okay? And then they want the OCP APIM subscription key. This is the primary key. So, and then they also need this. In the body, you're supposed to have this, the callback host. Who is the callback host? So if you've created the user, this is the response you'll get. You'll get a 201 that the user is created. Meaning, those of you who are programmers, you know, you'll get to know by use of JSON. I'll be using PHP and JSON decoding and encoding. You get to know that this is the kind of response you expect, but the user does not say, of course, that response is few for real programming. If you get a 400, it means you've made a bad request. If you get a 409, it means the user is already there, but you're trying to duplicate this user, and it will warn you that the user already exists. If you get a 500, it means there is an internal server error with the Sandbox. And then these are some of the samples that you can paste in your code, but I haven't used them so much. So I'll be using also PHP curl with JSON. PHP curling with JSON. So what we're going to do, we're going to choose to try it. Okay. So the first thing they want is an X reference UUID. So you see the subscription key is already provided for me. Since the subscription key is already provided for me since I'm using the Sandbox. But if you're using Postman, of course, you have to paste the subscription key. So I'm going to come to the UUID generator and then I copy. So I've copied, I've pressed copy, and then I come here and then I paste. Okay, then I'm going to be creating another user, so I'll change. Anyway, let me go with that. And then I paste the X reference ID. Now, the one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have it on side here because I'll need to use it over and over again. Okay, so that is my X ref ID. So I may need to use it over and over again, as you're going to see. So let me start, I think. Let me launch Sublime. Let me launch Sublime Text so that I can paste that. Okay, I already did certain requests here. Let me just create a new file. Then I paste my UUID. All right. So, okay, so where is my try it? Come on. Okay, let me just do it again. I think I've lost. Oh, all right, it's okay. Okay, here we are. All right, so I've pasted that, and then I need to provide a callback host. The callback host is your testing environment right now. So your testing environment, for example, maybe localhost, maybe localhost anything. So localhost 8000 for now, okay? And then, of course, the subscription key has already been provided. So down here is a summary of what you're already providing, okay? So I'm going to send a request, Okay, so I've sent a request and I've got a response. The response is that user is created. All right. So after creating this user, just checking to know that I'm still alive. All right. So after creating this user, they are telling us we are going to get now to know that the user has been created. Okay. So so the other one was a post. So this one is a guest. So before I get the API key, so we want to verify if the user has been created. Okay. So when you click on that, so this is the request now. The X reference ID that I copied, okay, that is the UUID. I'm going to use it because it is the one tied to that particular user I've just created. And that user is you, the owner of that company, the owner of that application. So that ID is needed now to be pasted here. And then we are making a get, okay? So let's try this also. Let's try this. Okay, so they need the X reference ID and that key, the primary key. So if the response is 200, it means that user has been created. If the response is 400, it means, if the response is 404, it means the user is not found. Okay, so and this is the message you could get if the user is not found, and then this is the message for the internal server error. All right, so we're going to try that. So the first thing they need is our X reference ID. If you're in Postman, you'll have to paste the primary key again and the UUID. So remember I pasted my UUID here, so I'm going to copy it and then paste it here. All right. So I've pasted the UUID, and this is the summary now that I get, and this is the URL. So the URL is telling us that we should paste the X reference ID at the end after. So the first one was to create the API user, which was a post. Now this one is the get. We are getting the user from the sandbox. So I'm going to send, and the response is okay, meaning the user has been created, and you can see all that I provided where the local host is the callback URL. And then the content type is also JSON. I'll come back to Postman when I'm talking about those. And then the target environment is the sandbox. Okay, so we are not yet live. We are just testing our responses. So it means now that that user has been created in the sandbox. Okay, so what am I going to do now? I'm going to get the API key. Okay, so it's now a post. So I'm posting to the sandbox to give me the API key. So what do we need? We need, of course, the S reference ID, the one that I copied here, the one that I have in Sublime. All right, and then stroke API key. So that is the URL. So this is the URL that you're going to paste, but then here you place the UUID, which is the X reference ID. So they're telling you they need the X reference ID. So if this is a response 201, so they would have created the API key for me. So the API key, the response should be this API key and then the string. Okay, so let's test this too. All right. Hope we're moving on well. Okay, so what do they need? They need my X reference ID. I just paste that. So the user is already created. We've tested that. And this is now where I'm going to get the response. Okay. Okay. So let me send. Oh, it's a bad request. Let me first go back to the documentation and I see one item that I've not. Okay, I'm supposed to write this. No. Okay, let me do a check. Yeah, I do think I'm supposed to. This is a post. I'm getting a 40. Okay, yeah, I think I do need to provide the request body, which is the API key. post API key. Let me do a test again. I think I'm missing something here. Okay, I have a bad request. Let me revisit my postman. And I get to know what I'm supposed to provide here. Okay. It is warning me of a bad request. So you can see 400, according to the warnings here, that's a bad request, meaning I'm missing something. Okay, so invalid data was sent. So there's something I haven't sent. Let me do a check just to be sure. API user, API key. API key. API key. Okay, let me provide this as the body. I think the let me provide that as the body. The request. Come on. Is there anything I'm missing that I haven't? Let me first read the documentation here and be sure. Let me see. I'm creating the API key in the Sandbox environment. So this is the UID, this is the request, then the request body. The request body is supposed to be empty. The request body is supposed to be empty. Sorry. It's supposed to be empty, and then I'm supposed to receive the API key as response. So I don't know if there's anything that I'm missing. I understand what I'm missing. Maybe. Let me first generate another. Let me generate another UUID. I don't think I'm supposed to be using the same UUID. I don't think so. Okay, the user is created. The body is empty. Let me see. This is for the user. This is for the user. Where is my other browser? send a request. Unless I did, unless I added something. Where is my other tab? Unless I added something when I copied the. Did I add something when I, let me copy this again, unless I added something. Okay. Paste. I'm supposed to get a response. Send. Okay. Okay, we've got the API key created. I think my mistake was I had pasted a space and it was considering the space as the character. So we do have the response created, 201 created, and then this is the API key. So it is very important you save this API key because we're going to use it now to create our requests. All right, so that is our UUID, and then this is the API key. All right, so now this API key is your terminal, your key is like a secret code through your app that you will be using to make requests from MTN. Right now we are making requests from the server. All right, and then the UUID is your is like what you're going to be using as your representation, you as the user. So now this is your user ID, okay, and then this is the password. All right, so now that we have that, let's go and see. We've created the user. So I have a subscription with collections. So let me go to collections. So we're going to create a collection. So by the way, for remember that for the sandbox provisioning, we were for the sandbox provisioning, when we were getting the API key, we did a post. Okay, so now we're coming back to collections. All right, and then we're going to post a request to pay. We're going to post a request to pay. So here you read through, and then so the first thing they need is an authorization. So this authorization, they're saying the authorization here they're using for basic authentication and auth. Format of this should be, is it bearer? Okay, so the word bearer should be put before, and then you put the API key. No, yeah, the API key. And then the callback URL, the X reference ID, this one can now change. And then the target environment is the sandbox, and then the content type, that can be JSON, and then the subscription key. And then in the body, this is what you put. You put the amount, the currency, the external ID, which can be, I think this will be provided as a summary the moment you fill in this. I do feel so. If the request has been accepted, this is what you will get. All right, so let's try it. Let's try it.